Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
7 years old can be a very critical age in a human's life. It's the year we graduate from first grade to second grade. It also may be the year when you first participate in a sport that will shape your future. But for me, it was the age when my parents decided they wanted to lead separate lives. I grew up like any average girl, attended a good preschool, participated in sports, and had good friends. My parents, as I recall, were always in a good mood with each other and shared the joy of raising their daughter together. I have few memories of the bad times my parents had argued. The worst memory I recall is lying in my bed one night when I was 7 years old and having my parents come into my room and my father saying, "Tanya, your mother and I are getting a divorce." My immediate reaction was a natural instinct for a young child, which was to blame myself. I often had more than one birthday party as a kid. This sounds cool, but it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I'm a child of divorce. My childhood wasn't mine, it belonged to my parents. I lost myself in every effort to appease each side of my family. Shuffling alone between two separate lives meant that I was on the fringe of each family, never an insider. The people I loved most were never in the same room together, and many of them barely even knew each other existed. I missed out on events and celebrations because I would have to spend time with my other family. Children of divorce learn to cope with these struggles and instability by the age of 10. I no longer wanted to deal with it. I didn't want to live in two different homes with two different bedrooms, different clothes, different toys, different friends, and even different rules. I was a 10-year-old caught between a rock and a hard place. So one day I told my dad that I didn't want to visit anymore. It was a courageous and ignorant act, to be honest. We will never know if it was the right decision or not. But at the time, neither one of my parents possessed the emotional stability it would have taken to unearth a more positive solution. And so that was the way things went. The power struggle that had lain dormant between my parents erupted again, and this time it was directed at me. This time I was responsible for the discord. In one house, I was blamed, in the other, I was a victim. There were no more multiple birthday parties. Instead, there was stability and consistency in one house, anger and avoidance in the other. Choice is met with consequences, and as time went on, I fell out of touch with my dad's family. It's hard to stay in touch with people connected to someone we have pushed away. Cousins I used to play with were erased from my life. We never visited again. Was that because it's best to keep served ties cut? Or was it my punishment for being a horrible child? All I knew was silence and loss. When I was in my early teens, my mom remarried and I met new cousins. I learned new Christmas traditions and sat with new kids at the dinner table. Instead of being ushered from one family to the other, life settled down. Even though I heard from my dad only once or twice a year, life was fairly stable. But that changed again when my mom and stepdad split up during my first year of university. I tried to keep in touch with my family members every time I went home for the holidays. Again, I tried to please everyone while anxiety flooded my thoughts. Whom should I spend Christmas Eve with? Should I visit with this family or that one? Will they be offended if I don't make time to see them? Will they be offended if I don't bring presents? I would have loved to have everyone drop by and visit me, but that would not have gone very well at my mom's house. Instead, I diligently visited everybody on my own, carrying thoughtful little presents I bought on my student budget. I would make small talk and feel like an outsider. I was always the awkward guest, never the welcoming host. For 10 years after I graduated from university, I lived away from home. Not a single family member from any one of my four families, save for my mom, came to visit, called, or even let me know when they flew through town. Yet, every time I went home for Christmas, I scheduled visits, bought presents, and made time to see as many people as I could. I did this to make them feel good, not me. 2 years ago, I moved back home, and now I live less than a day's drive away from all four of my families, their new spouses, and young kids. We're all connected on Facebook, but my mom is still the only person who ever calls or visits. When I hear that a family member passed through town but didn't call, it saddens me. But I realized that they don't call because they don't really know me. To them, I was never a fixture. I was only ever around a few Christmases here and there, and although they were my family, I was never theirs. They don't know that they are just one of several people spread across four different families that I wasn't able to keep in touch with. Sometimes divorce spreads us too thin to make anything real, lasting family connections. This summer, I am getting married and starting my family. I'm trying not to have too many expectations. I know no family is perfect, but my soon to be husband is the king at keeping in touch with people. He's persistent, charismatic, forgiving, and loyal. He's teaching me what family means. Together, we will teach our kids to reach out to one another with compassion and to stick by each other through times of darkness. I'm looking forward to joy and friendship with my new family, and I plan to do everything I can to stay married.
Every one of us has a talent. It may be singing beautifully, drawing artistically, writing poetically. We're all different. Our special talents make us happy. We are all unique in our own way, living in a world full of peace, love, and happiness. But what if our talent became our bane? Well, my talent did become my bane. Let me tell you how. My name is Jenny, and I'm 16 years old. I lived in a quiet neighborhood with my parents and my little brother Matthew. I didn't have a lot of friends or hobbies. I was only interested in social media, but I always had a feeling that I had something unique, something that distinguished me from others. Turned out I was right. It all started on my grandmother's birthday. My family and I were traveling to her home to celebrate the occasion. The road was narrow and bumpy, with a rocky shoulder on one side and a river on the other. Dad was driving too fast, so obviously, Mom was a bit worried. Conversely, Matthew was excited. It was raining so hard that day that Dad feared the weather might get even worse, so he was driving faster than he should have, to try to arrive at Grandma's house quickly. I was worried too, but for a slightly different reason. I had a feeling of impending doom on that trip. The rain got progressively worse. There was almost continuous lightning and thunder. Suddenly, we saw a big truck that had stopped on the road ahead of us. Mom screamed. Dad swerved to avoid hitting the truck and lost control of the car, which had gone on one of its sides and off the road into the river. It was the most frightening situation I had ever experienced in my whole life. We went underwater, and I felt as if we were in an aquarium. Dad was unconscious, and his forehead was bleeding. Mom was struggling, and Matthew was paralyzed with fear, his eyes tightly shut. Then, my vision went dark. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed, with a team of doctors around me. When I asked them about my family, the look on their faces told me that I was the sole survivor of that horrible accident. Several days had passed since the accident. I was having trouble sleeping. The doctors gave me some sleeping pills. They even tried hypnosis to help me sleep. Grandma came to visit me. She was very sad. She said I could come live with her. My whole life was turned upside down in an instant. A police officer at the hospital was kind enough to drive Grandma and I to her home. After he dropped us off, something strange happened. In a fraction of a second, I had a vision, a momentary premonition that something bad was going to happen to him. I saw him trying to catch a thief, and suddenly crashing into another car. So I thanked him for the ride, and told him to take care of himself, to be very careful. He smiled, and said that he will. The very next day, as I was watching the news, I saw a report that very same kind officer had died in a car crash, just like my premonition. Grandma was upset when I told her what had happened. I didn't tell her that I had foreseen his death, because I knew that she wouldn't believe me. In fact, she might have even thought I was crazy. This strange turn of events happened again, with one of our neighbors, who visited us one day. She was a kind, lovely woman. I had a premonition that she would die in her kitchen due to a gas line explosion. I urged her to be careful with the cooking gas, because it could be so dangerous. But she just laughed and said that she loved cooking, and that there's nothing to fear. Grandma got a bit upset with me for making a big deal out of nothing. She said that I was just a little paranoid due to the accident, and that my imagination was getting way too overactive, and that I shouldn't try to scare people. Needless to say, the neighbor that I had warned did indeed die in a gas line explosion 4 days later. Coincidence? I think not. Am I somehow causing these incidents to happen? I couldn't help but think that I was somehow linked to the whole thing. I searched the internet for any information about this phenomena, and I found that it was common in people who had been involved in a traumatic experience, especially almost drowning incidents. I read a research that said that parts of the subject's brain would become very active. After our neighbor's accident, my aunt and uncle came to visit us. I had missed them a lot, but yet again, I had a premonition that they would have an accident going home, causing their car to explode and crash into the river. 2 days later, they were preparing to leave and head home. I begged them to stay one more night, but they said that they couldn't because they had work the next day. I told Grandma about my premonition, and she scolded me, told me to stop this nonsense. She thought it was my overactive imagination again. My uncle came in as Grandma was scolding me and asked me what was wrong. I wanted to say, "Nothing important, Uncle. Just premonitions of doom, that's all." But I didn't. I went to sleep instead and had a dream that Uncle was going to get run over by a car. Suddenly, I woke up to the sound of Uncle and Grandma's voices. They were talking about me, and it was raining outside. Uncle stood up and said that he had to get something from his car. I sat up straight and shouted, "No, don't go." Uncle said, "Jenny, it'll be fine. I'll just get something from the car." I couldn't dissuade him from going, so I followed him out. Uncle went out to his car and was standing by its door, which was facing the road. Then I saw the headlights. A car was coming down the road, driving towards us. I saw the car hit a flooded spot on the road and suddenly began sliding sideways, right towards Uncle. Instinctively, I made a decision to try and protect him. I had to at least try. I jumped in front of the swerving car. The driver saw me and tried to regain control. Suddenly, I felt a warm sunshine mysteriously coming down from the sky amidst the rain, and I felt calm and safe. And I had one final premonition before everything went dark.